From BOTNS City in Hollywood. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to Battle of the Network shows, Season 12.
Season 12.
And I have a prediction, Rick.
Yeah?
Mike. Last year was our most interactive season yet.
Mm-hmm. It certainly was.
I think this season is going to be our most socially relevant and most socially irrelevant season.
Ooh, interesting. You think so? Well, I hadn't really considered that. I thought you were going to say that you were predicting that this would be our least interactive season.
Oh, it could be that.
Which well could be as well.
Yes, yeah. At least since the early days.
Yes.
When we didn't have an audience.
That's right. Now that I think about it, you're right. We'll just say this, that we know some things that the audience doesn't know about what's coming up on the schedule.
Yes, we do.
And it's very exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff, but yes, it's a good assortment as usual, but I think your prediction may well hold up, Mike.
And a couple shows that some listeners might be like, well, haven't you covered that already? Because, we are in season 12, and like the show we're going to do today, they're pretty big shows from that era.
It is.
It's taken a while to get to them.
And it's something we've referenced directly or indirectly multiple times over the course of the previous 11 seasons.
Correct, yeah.
So maybe we've been building up to this, I guess, in a way.
Yes, or avoiding it.
Yeah.
However you want to view that.
Right. Well, I'll just say this, since we're going that direction. Mm-hmm. We're an entertainment show. We can be relevant. We can talk about socially relevant stuff, but I'm not going to turn this into a political episode. I'm not going to go off on a big tangent about Hoybert Hoover in this episode. Okay. I just don't want to go there.
How about turlets?
Well, turlets are okay.
Okay. But
I'm not getting into Hoybert Hoover.
Also, if you're sensitive to the word meathead, apologies in advance because, I think just to avoid confusion of mics, yes, we might be using that term a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've never called you that.
No.
So you and I we're cool. We can keep that straight.
I don't think anyone's ever called me a meathead, but my dad certainly called me a doughhead.
Doughhead, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not in a flattering way, I assume.
No.
Meant to be a little, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Not Archie level in insult, but
no, but
usually inspired by some possibly dough-headed behavior.
Some indiscretion or yes.
Yeah, or just, not knowing how to hammer a nail properly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's probably good that we use Meathead more often. Yeah. And there's many things that Archie calls Meathead that, are probably even worse. So
yes,
we should just stick with that, and I think that'll be a good way to avoid some confusion.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll be repeating any of Archie's slurs from this particular episode.
No,
he lets them fly.
Yes, he does more than I thought, actually.
Yeah.
Have we? I guess should we mention the name of the show?
Oh yeah. Yes, it's the Archies. Right, Archie, Meathead, Betty, and Veronica. Right?
Yeah. Meathead's always got that, prodigious appetite.
Yeah.
He's always scarfing down hamburgers, and Archie's calling him out for it.
Yeah. And there's a moose in this episode.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's all in the family if you haven't guessed or didn't read the...
Yes, which is possible, because we know our loyal fans, thank you. They don't need to know what we're talking about.
No.
They're just going to download it or just going to come right into their podcast system. And
that's
sometimes hey, let us know. Do you do that? Do you just surprise yourself and don't bother looking at the topic and then wait for the 10 minutes for us to get around to saying what we're talking about?
Right.
It's all in the family. Maybe the crown jewel of the Lear-verse, the Norman Lear
certainly
multiverse.
The beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if we're using the DC metaphor, it would technically be the Earth 2.
Yeah, I guess it would, wouldn't
it?
Right? So the All in the Family would be like the pilot would be the Action Comics #1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then episodes with guest stars. I don't know. Those are Justice Society.
Yeah. I'm always up for a good Justice Society comparison.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've talked about the Jeffersons. We talked about Maude. Mm-hmm. We talked about Good Times.
Yep.
All shows that spun off from All in the Family.
That's right.
Am I missing one? I don't know.
I don't,
I think we got the big
no,
ones.
because the other ones were the sort of like different strokes that
Yeah.
are not
They're
directly connected.
right. They're part of the extended Lear-verse.
Yes.
Facts of life.
Yeah. Earth 80s.
Yes. We're finally here.
Yep.
And I think it's a good way to kick off this 12th season
I do.
with an all-time classic.
Yeah. Is it an all-time classic that we like? That's a question we'll get into.
I guess I'll have to think about that so I can give an answer to that in the next before the episode ends. Huh?
Right, yeah.
I can tell you I didn't watch this show very much when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it being on as many of the shows we've discussed, especially like these 1970s shows.
Yeah.
I just remember it as a background show and being on and being aware of it, but not sitting down and watching it like I did a lot of the other ones we've talked about.
Yeah. I remember it, being on in reruns, probably on TBS or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And just, being aware of it, being aware of the characters. I feel like maybe not liking it because everyone was yelling so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I could be wrong about that. And then I believe I've mentioned this before. I remember my dad watching Archie Bunker's Place. I think just because he would leave it on CBS after 60 minutes.
Right.
There it was.
Yeah.
Along with Alice and One Day at a Time or whatever was on. And, so I have more memory of that. And in fact, until just really like a week ago, I had built up some misinformation in my head, kind of based on things that I think I had seen on that, which was that, and this comes up as a joke in the pilot, but for some reason I got in my mind that Archie was secretly or unbeknownst to him Jewish. Not the case, but the Teresa that they adopt near the end of All in the Family, and then that carries over into Teresa, is that her name?
Or Stephanie.
Yeah. Stephanie.
Teresa's the sort of their live-in
Puerto Rico, yeah, the
border
yes.
for a while. Yeah.
Sorry, Stephanie was Edith's step-niece. I think that's what I read.
Yeah, I remember she's a niece. I can't remember if it's a step niece or not.
I believe so. So it turns she's Jewish, and Archie has to kind of accept that. And I just remember images of him like wearing a yarmulke.
Yes.
And I know there's one, I started watching it today, didn't get through it, where he has to deliver a eulogy for his pal Stretch Cunningham, who turns out to be Jewish. So that was in my head. That was wrong. I apologize, Archie, to your...
Well...
But,
I'm glad you've set the record straight.
Yeah. It
internally,
wasn't
too.
it wasn't a Mandela effect thing.
Yeah, but you can now kind of really judge the show on its own merits without having this misinformation in your head.
That's right, yeah. And I also, for some reason, my head had it that Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers left after the third or fourth season. Mm-hmm. I guess they're not in every episode at some point. But
no, they taper off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like they move out of the house, then they move out to across the country, and then
So I was wrong about that.
Well,
and then I was kind of disappointed. I knew they had gotten divorced, but then I read sort of the details of why they got divorced, and that was a little disappointing because it made Meathead into a real Meathead, like an actual just a heel.
Mm-hmm.
Not just that their marriage fell apart, but he ran off with a student or something.
Right. It retroactively, it does kind of change the way you watch the show.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily, mean Archie's right about everything.
Yeah.
Or Mike's wrong about everything.
Right.
But some of the Mike and Gloria relationship, because I've seen a couple of episodes where they're kind of going at it, back and forth and stuff. And now it plays a lot differently when you know how the show ended. And I agree, that is kind of disappointing. I don't really know that they needed to do that, but they did. It's official.
Yeah. Maybe somebody had an issue with Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
So had to stick it to his character.
Well, if I mentioned before, I don't know if I mentioned the podcast, when I worked at a movie theater, people were walking out, and I think, was it a Standia poster we had for The Story of Us, I think it was. Yeah. Directed by Rob Reiner.
Yes.
Somebody, parent points it out, directed by Rob Reiner. And the young kid goes, "I'm sick of Rob Reiner." I think I've said that in the podcast before.
Maybe. You definitely told me that before.
So, this is in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Rob Reiner fatigue had set in.
Right.
Said then, but maybe years earlier it had too.
But I don't think so. Level. I mean, Embassy produced Spinal Tap.
That's true. Oh, good point. Yes.
Yeah. I doubt there was.
Well, it's funny because I think we both listened to Sally Struthers on the Gilbert Gottfried podcast, where she, kind of revealed that, she had some real issues working on the show. But Carol O'Connor was the one who missed like a lot of episodes due to contract disputes.
Right, yeah.
And if anything, he had probably had the most contentious relationship with Norman Lear and the producers, I think. And actually, I was just reading, I have a TV guide that came out like when Archie Bunker's Place was ending its run, and Carol O'Connor has a written by Carol O'Connor account of what it was like to be Archie.
Yeah.
That's what it says, but it's really like what it was like to find out that Archie Bunker's Place is being canceled. It's kind of about that, about the last days of like finding that out. And he says at some point, he says something like, I must admit I was, acted indelicately, or it's sort of like he's accepting blame for misbehaving during contract disputes several times. So it was interesting that he did that. But one thing I wanted to mention too is All in the Family went 9 seasons, then Archie Bunker's Place went 4 seasons.
Yeah.
As a child, I remember Archie Bunker's Place being on like as a new show, not really watching it, but so that's why to me that kind of loomed a little bit larger, maybe proportionately. But All in the Family was in reruns at the same time. I thought it was interesting reading this TV guide from like 1983 or whatever it is. There's an article right after the Carol O'Connor piece. Kenneth Turan, I guess longtime Los Angeles Times film critic, has like a sort of a year-by-year look through All in the Family with like some behind-the-scenes stuff and everything, taking through the evolution of the show. But it's written as if, okay, this is one long show. Because I was curious about that, because I made this distinction in my head between Archie Bunker's Place and All in the Family, but I think a lot of people treat it as like one long show. Yeah. Although I think in syndication, I think they're usually split up. But I don't know. I think maybe stations that were showing All in the Family would just slip in the Archie Bunker's Place episodes too. But it does seem like at the time, I think maybe if there's the distinction has grown wider over the years, possibly because they're syndicated in different packages.
Right.
Like All in the Family is complete on DVD. I have like a nice little compact DVD set.
Yeah.
Archie Bunker's Place is not, and it's a lot of it's actually harder to find than a lot of other shows. And it was a popular show for 4 seasons.
You know why? The Martin Balsam estate.
Man,
they're holding it up.
There's always thorny issues when you're dealing with the Martin Balsam estate.
Yes. That's one of my biggest memories of Archie Bunker's Place. That's the first place I saw Martin Balsam. I didn't know his name then, but then years later seeing him in 12 Angry Men or All the President's Men or something, some classic movie, and like, oh, it's that guy from Archie Bunker's Place.
Yeah, he did other stuff. Wow.
Yeah. Oh.
But
Alan Melvin is on it too, and
the great Alan Melvin.
Yes, the great Alan Melvin. I don't know if I made the connection back then that it's Sam the Butcher, but I'm sure I made the connection. I know that face.
Oh yeah.
Hard to forget that face.
Yes, and like for me, my beloved New York stations, I think it was Channel 5, WNEW was the one that showed All in the Family most often. And to me, that was kind of like, of the three, WPIX-WR and WNEW, and I think WPIX was maybe the most urbane.
Yeah.
It showed like Odd Couple, Honeymooners, and Twilight Zone, Star Trek, that I've talked about before. WR, the New York station, I knew they always like trumpeted being part of like, I don't know if you can trumpet this, but they announced that they were from Secaucus, New Jersey.
Yeah, they did. Yes.
So that gave it a little bit of a different, different style too. It just had a little bit different. Whereas the Channel 5 to me was kind of like the older, it just felt like more of the old person's network. So like I did watch a lot of stuff on there, and actually they had some of the best cartoons for a while, oddly enough. But like a lot of the stuff they would show, like some of the movies they showed, I wasn't as interested in, except for like maybe when they had like Kung Fu Theater on the weekends and stuff like that. I think they would show those. So I associated All in the Family kind of with like just an older version of New York that wasn't kind of my thing. And, just like the whole thing, Queens and everything, and just kind of like, it's just a little different to me. And I just never got into the show.
Well, and it's got those really old people in it too.
Yes.
In there.
You're going to go, are you going to go there?
They're late 40s and early 50s.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, a show that essentially spanned the whole 1970s. You see the characters age.
Yeah.
And Carol O'Connor, you see him age physically. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the show so neatly lines up and aligns with the 1970s in so many ways, really. But to me, like the socially relevant part of it is like the early 70s, and then like kind of post Watergate and the Jimmy Carter era. Those are like the later years of All in the Family, which I didn't really have much relationship with those at all, until kind of going back for these. So like a lot of those, some of the earlier episodes I would be more familiar with, but like after like the 5th or 6th season, even after the 5th season, it becomes like kind of a different, things are changing in the show.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't happen to see any episodes, but did they address Watergate?
I remember. Oh,
I'm sure
yes,
they did.
but more like yes, I think they had arguments because they argued about Nixon all the time.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Archie like had a take on the legality of it or something.
Right.
Like one explain. Like I don't know if he did like a big explainer, like
Yeah.
according to Archie, but they argue, and I've seen like references to like characters and like people that were grilling Nixon.
Yeah.
Like he made some like Senator Sam Ervin joke in one episode I watched recently, and I was like, oh, yeah, Sam Ervin joke, But I mean, that's interesting. That's the kind of thing that for many people would date the show.
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't. Like I find that interesting.
Right.
And I'm curious about those kind of things. But to a lot of people, it would date it. But I think like when you think about, okay, what was the politics of All in the Family? To me, I think Watergate, Nixon, what was going on, like reactions to like the 1968 and those kind of tumultuous times. I don't at all think of like, okay, Carter administration,
Right.
late 70s and stuff like that. I just don't think of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I haven't seen as many of those episodes or if the show itself changed dramatically over that time. I know they got into social issues that were more not as big, straight up political.
Yeah.
They continued on that track, but
Right. Get the sense Archie maybe matured over time. Some of his experiences revealed to him that some of his opinions were maybe a little off base.
right,
Not entirely, because I guess even on Archie Bunker's Place, he would still get into
right.
arguments about things.
But I think he definitely changed, and I think they softened the character, and
Yeah.
I think part of it was inevitable.
Right.
Just after years of doing it, and Carol O'Connor's performance, and just getting comfortable with the character, and I think they never set up the character to be, J.R. Ewing.
Right. Yeah, he was just a very fallible human being.
One of the things I was reading for the podcast here was interesting. It was like the author of the novel Gentleman's Agreement. That was a movie with Gregory Peck, and about anti-Semitism. I guess she came out and around when the show was getting popular,
Yeah.
and said bigots aren't lovable, and she was protesting the show.
Yeah.
Norman Lear responded directly to that and said, "Well, the point of the show is not they're lovable people who are bigots."
Yes.
So it was like, and I could see like seeing the quotes side by side. She is saying he didn't really directly address her,
Yeah.
but she's basically saying like, if you're a bigot, I don't have any room for you at all. And Norman
Right.
Lear is saying, look, there's bigots in all walks of life. From his own family experiences, he knows this, and so to him, it was not a big deal to make it a well-rounded character.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because as much as the talk about Norman Lear and his well-known liberal stances, he clearly did not set up the show to make Archie 100% wrong. He
Right.
clearly wanted to make a sympathetic character.
Yeah. Well,
And he did.
I think about this a lot just because of the times we live in, but was thinking about watching the show too, that the human reaction, or at least American reaction, we kind of want things to be everything to be either or.
Mm-hmm.
And I think partly because that's more comfortable, that you can just say that person's good, that person's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. And the reality is, I think, more complicated and a little scarier, which is that someone who is capable of loving their family and being decent in a lot of ways, and I'm not trying to like both sides this, but has abhorrent beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
that those things can go side by side. To
Mhm.
me, that's much scarier than just calling someone a monster, because a monster, you can just be like done with them. And people who live with bigots, I mean, what are they supposed? I guess they can be like Mike and Gloria and argue against it,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully persuade some change. But realistically, they're probably not going to totally abandon their family,
Mm-hmm.
and just they're not all going to walk out of that house.
Right.
And as Archie, he's not the best husband.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of verbally abusive, but I can't imagine he'd ever lay a hand on, unless there's an episode where that happens. But I can't imagine there's,
no.
And Edith clearly adores him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why necessarily, but she does.
Mm-hmm.
That there's something worthwhile in there, and you see it come out sometimes. And I think it, just if he were just a one-note bigot, the show wouldn't have lasted
Right.
that long. If we count it as one show, whatever that is, 13 seasons,
Mm-hmm.
it just wouldn't have. It's. I mean that to me is if there's a genius to it, it's that it is a more well-rounded view of humanity than you get sometimes in these things.
I think that's all very well said. Yes,
Yeah.
and essentially it is like a family sitcom. I mean,
Yeah.
looking back, it's easy to think, oh, and yes, it is a lot of like people shouting at each other,
Yes.
but it's not like every episode is like, okay, issue of the week, and here's one
Right.
side, here's the other side, and they're going at it. No, it's like a family sitcom, and what resonates isn't so much those kind of discussions. It seems like a lot of the jokes come from that, but a lot of it, what resonates is, okay, Archie cares for his family, and they care for him, and Archie is well-meaning, and like a lot of the episodes, he's clearly proven wrong,
Yes.
and quote unquote punished for things, or just more kind of like his ignorance really is what comes through.
Yeah,
and that does stand out.
And fear and just not having, like a lot of people, the tools to deal with what he's feeling.
Right.
And I think, it's not just that he's dealing, like in this episode, we're going to talk about, he talks about the world kind of passing him by. But it's not just that, he's getting older, and he's, that comes up a lot. This sort of sense of mortality. And that one that he's not really in much, the one with the game. It's about Mike, where Edith, who's much wiser than she seems, really spells out the whole show for
She
him.
does, yeah.
She's like, he's jealous of you because he's not going to go anywhere else but where he is. And you have the whole world at your feet. And that often leads to lashing out at the things you don't understand.
I think the series is better than I remembered, like going and exploring it. And I was surprised at how well it articulated a lot of these issues. Working class, fear, like you said, and just ideas that the world is passing by, and just Archie Bunker clearly being a product of his environment, and having troubles coping with that. And I think it really captures that sort of dynamic very well. And it doesn't always do it like in a way that's that explicit, but it's there. And I'm very surprised, like going back, watching these episodes, just like that whole undercurrent and how well it's played, just in the quality of the performances and a lot of the writing. But it's really there. Just all these things that you just articulated, they really are present in the show. And to me, it's more like, again, I can understand why people would be turned off by some of the language, and maybe some of the attitudes in it. But I think for me, I'm able to like look past that. I'm like, okay, this is really looking, to use a cliche again, it's looking at the human condition. It really is. And it's summing that up very well. So to me, it's more like the sociological aspects of it are what stand out to me, like years later looking at it and like, okay, this stuff holds up.
Yeah. Now, there are a few things that make it a little difficult for me to watch, and they're just my kind of things. One, I know we've talked about this before, the feeling of claustrophobia. Because they rarely leave the house. They rarely leave the living room. Occasionally they go in the kitchen or one of the bedrooms. And it's, it is a kind of dreary house. And, it looks lived in. I like that. And I like his chair. And, and that Edith has her special chair. And things like that I do like, but it's still like, it just gets to me. The yelling. And then the thing about Archie that I find more difficult to deal with is the fact that he's just so miserable. He's just a sour person most of the time. Like this episode, at the beginning, he's happy. Yeah. But within, a minute, he's sneering about something. And just, that. Or there's another episode I saw where he just starts going on, the way she does, very joyfully about some weird dream she had, and it's like, just like, can't you just be happy a little bit? But he's not. I mean, that's not the character, but it makes it hard to watch a lot of them because I'm like, I don't really want to spend my time with someone who's so miserable. Yeah. And I've just been feeling lately in life that one of my goals as I age is to not be miserable. My personality is not bubbly, but I just don't want to be that where everything is like a reason to complain or be disgusted by, or you can't enjoy someone else's happiness.
It's definitely a certain type, right? I mean, just that sort of beaten down. He's a dock worker, driving a cab, right? Before he gets to the bar and everything.
But I think it's just his natural disposition.
It's just a lot of negative energy. You're right. Yeah. And in this episode that we're going to talk about, when he comes in, he's in a good, but it stands out so much that Edith asks like if there's something wrong with him.
Yes, exactly.
Because she's not used to it, and it's jarring to see him come in like that. Yeah. You said a lot of interesting things there. One thing is the production design was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I never saw the British sitcom Till Death Do Us Part.
I have something to say about that.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So
Sure.
I guess Norman Lear wanted the show to be black and white originally.
Yeah.
And they said no, that we're not going to do that. But he tried to make it like sepia toned as much as possible, and just have a particularly like drab production design to make it look like that. The claustrophobic aspect, like for me, as I've said many times, my favorite show is The Honeymooners.
Right.
So that's not an issue for me.
Yeah.
The Honeymooners was maybe the most claustrophobic show ever. And there's more than a few similarities between those shows, and I'm sure that was partly inspiration as well.
Yeah.
To me, it didn't stand out. Oh, and also, you didn't directly mention this, but it was shot on video.
Right.
And it looks it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I didn't realize, but I mean, that was responsible for most sitcoms going to video.
Yeah. I mean, this
is pretty weird.
They could.
Yeah.
It's like, hey. and they're like plays, and I guess that's how they treated it, like plays. The production schedule was based on, very similar to that. They do like a rehearsal, and I think they taped it twice.
Right.
And then they combined it, like The Honeymooners did that too. So yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of that. To me, it doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very stagey in that sense, and a lot of it, just the four principles. Hopefully, the four principles usually.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't mind the staginess of like it's kind of refreshing in a way to just have like 2 acts and you're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or maybe 2 acts and a little scene at the end, but
right.
Compared to a broadcast sitcom today,
right?
It's like 6 acts.
And part of that format requires you're concentrating on one story.
Yeah.
You might have different elements woven in, but you don't have to have like a B and a C plot.
Right.
And the thing, you actually have like, 25 minutes where you're focusing on one story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of refreshing too, going back and watching like an old sitcom like that, is saying, okay, you don't have a bunch of different characters. Sometimes I kind of like it, like
and I could see like a viewer now going like, oh, there's so much telling and not enough showing, we don't see the main action in this episode of what happens, but I kind of would rather hear Archie tell the story of what happened because he's so good. I don't need to see him going to do this thing when he can tell me about it with all his emotions. And,
right.
That's still we're seeing his response to it, and that's a showing.
Right.
Of a kind. But I could see that reaction being, well, you got to show every scene, this and that.
Yeah.
But so I looked on YouTube and some episodes of Till Death Us Do Part.
Ah, okay.
Just bizarre.
Right.
And in fact, someone had uploaded the first episode. Now, a lot of them are, technically gone in classic BBC fashion. Mm-hmm. But talk about claustrophobic. This makes the Honeymooners look like they live in a mansion. It's like just a camera, looking at the sitting room, filled with stuff. I think maybe it pans every now and then, but otherwise it's just this one shot. Alf, I believe his name is Alfie, the Archie character, is railing against whatever he's railing against. That's the other thing. It's very hard to understand. But the wife, who's very un-Edith-like, is in the background ironing. I mean, she looks like Flo from Andy Capp. She's got a cigarette dangling out of her mouth. The daughter's sitting on the couch, I think, with Alf, or maybe he has a chair, but they're right next to each other. And then the Mike character is, I guess, getting ready for work. I mean, I didn't make it far enough, but like at some point he like takes off his shirt and is like just standing nearby shaving in some little corner. And I read that they don't even have an indoor bathroom. It's just
wow.
And I was like, oh, and it is black and white. And of course, this was a YouTube video of one. Who knows where it came from? Probably 20th generation tape or something. Yeah. And British stuff already looks a little less quality than we're used to. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it through this. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I was curious. And I guess he's much more, that character is much more of a straight heel than Archie. Fans of that show consider All in the Family watered down.
Yeah. I mean, I find it a little bit hard to understand, like, unironic, like, Archie Bunker for president, buttons from the time and stuff.
Right, yeah.
But I think the character is is pretty likable right from the start. And even like in those early episodes, like it's not like they baby faced the character eventually. Like it was right there from the beginning.
Yeah.
There was an episode early on, I think, where he's grouchy with everybody, and it turns out he did something at work. He screwed something up, and Edith figures out right away she figures out what it is. And at the end of the episode, she kind of explains it. It's not as annoying as it sounds, but she does it in a very well. And he just kind of like accepts it and realizes it and is quiet, And I'm like,
right.
oh, they did this really well.
Yeah.
I mean, right off the bat, this early episode, they're showing you that he's embarrassed, he's ashamed, and stuff like this. And these are things that you don't necessarily get in a lot of other sitcoms.
Right.
Like, think about just characters like acknowledging mistakes or having to deal with them and not having everything work out like perfectly at the end, but just sort of having that undercurrent of shame and regret and things like that. I thought that was kind of interesting. Did you ever see the Bunkers chairs at the
I have seen
Smithsonian?
it. Yeah.
No, I remember.
We should do a field trip down there sometime.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Now, I don't know if they're still on display because periodically they rotate those up, but I think they try to keep certain ones like.
I think that one is.
They put them like that in Fonzie's jacket.
Yeah.
And the ruby red slippers, or the Judy Garland slippers.
Yeah, and there was. I don't know if that stuff. There was some early
Urkel suspenders
Muppet stuff for a while. Oh yeah, Urkel suspenders. Hugh O'Brien's medallion. Wait, no, that's at the BOTNS museum.
Hugh Down's skillet.
Hugh Down's skillet, yes. But yeah, they have that in the right next to the Julia Child kitchen. The Hugh Downs skillet. Ernest Borgnine's bowling shoes.
That'd be my kind of museum.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
Well, if we ever get that NEA funding, we're always looking for. Open the BOTNS museum. Your collection of TV guides.
Yes.
Robert Pine pictures.
Yes.
And whatever else we can scrounge up.
Right. Let's do it. There's an episode about his chair a little bit later on in one of the
I saw that
mid-season
description.
Yeah, and it's very good.
Where Mike breaks his chair?
Yeah, Mike breaks his chair, and it winds up, getting put on an art display, and the guy wants to buy it from him. This artist wants to buy it from him, and it culminates like in a monologue that's pretty sentimental. But there's something just to say here. Carol O'Connor is so good. It avoids to me any trace of like being overly maudlin or anything, just because he plays it so well.
Yeah, I saw one today where he was trying to ingratiate himself to someone and made sure they didn't. Well, so he was making sure the person didn't sit in his chair, but then made them feel like because there's got a saggy bottom.
Yeah,
and he pointed to Edith's chair. This is the best chair in the house. And then, part of me is like, oh, that's nice. He wants his wife to have the best chair in the house.
Yes,
but then I know.
Yeah, he's got an angle.
Yeah, but it's surprising how often people are sitting in his chair. Yeah, well, like if he's not, like Mike sits in his chair, and I know he kicks him out of it a lot. But
the first appearance of Maude, there's a little bit of a battle over Maude sitting in his chair and him trying to maneuver her out of it. But I like seeing that episode with the chair though, because like that's another thing I didn't understand as a kid is like that doesn't look like a comfortable chair at all.
No,
but this episode explains like, well, it's not the chair itself, but he's had that chair for a long time. It has memories and all that. Yeah, it's like, well, that's not my kind of chair. It's a chair of a different generation, I guess. I guess in the days before, like Lazy Boy and that was
probably a pretty good chair back then.
Yeah, but
I bet that thing smelled.
Probably
cigars.
Yeah. And I like their setup though with the TV in the foreground.
Yeah.
And the two chairs, and and like in this episode, that we going to focus on today, the TV guide.
Yes.
The prime spot right on the TV.
I really love
for
that,
easy access.
that there was like a. He had another one where he picked up the TV guide or something. There was some, and like I just like really appreciated that there was a TV guide in a TV show.
Yes. And it's used. It's like well used and thumbed through.
Yeah. And yet, I'm sure as Edith's doing that, it's on the TV and not, because otherwise it would be tucked in the cushion of the chair.
Exactly, like wedged in the side of Yeah. That's right.
Where is that thing?
And of course
it's in your cushion.
And of course the appalling. This is something I didn't realize 100%, but I guess they have no bathrooms in the main level. One bathroom upstairs.
I think
Can
so.
it be right
yeah.
that they only have one bathroom in the whole house?
I think maybe.
I think they do, which, not uncommon for a house that age.
Yeah.
But man,
Also known as the reading room.
yeah.
A lot of arguments about the toilet paper.
Yes. Well, it can be a contentious subject,
Yeah.
no matter what side of the political fence you're on.
I got some postcard in the mail recently from a local terlet company.
Oh, really?
And terlets are kind of expensive.
Hmm.
At least the ones they were showing.
Hmm.
I mean, like $300-400.
Yeah.
And if you're going to spend a little, you want to spend. That's the thing you might want to spend a little on.
Yeah, I can see that. But I don't know. I mean,
That's not counting the plumbing, right? That's just the terlet.
Right. Yeah, the thing itself. Like it's been a while since I've had to pick one out.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the technology is like these days
These didn't look like
for over-the-counter turtles.
These were classic turtlets.
Okay.
These weren't like crazy Japanese
Okay.
turtlets or anything.
Yeah. Well,
Have we said turlet enough?
yeah.
Doesn't he say pernt in this one? Yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
To Barney.
A pernt. Yeah.
Well, should we get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it, I guess. Just a little bit of a brief overview. Show is on 9 seasons, as we said, and episode counts vary. I think I've seen 205 to 208, but I think they shot like 3 different pilots.
Right.
First 2 with different principals.
Yeah.
So I think 207 or maybe 205 is like probably the more accurate, but it's over 200. That's a lot. And then they did like 97 more episodes of Archie Bunker's Place, 4 seasons. That's like 13 years where that character, is headlining a show. And it started out. It was premiered. It was Tuesday nights, like 9:30. It didn't tear up the ratings its first season, but it found an audience in reruns that summer, and then it moved to its classic Saturday night 8 p.m. time slot for the second season. And from then on, it was the number 1 ranked show for 5 straight seasons, which is an incredible feat.
Yeah.
Of course. And it moved around a little bit. Now, one thing I found that was interesting was, so it was number 1 5 seasons, and then it lost a little bit of momentum. There was a thing called the Family Hour, which was like legislated that you had to have like family-friendly programming from like 8 to 9. And rather than water down the show, Norman Lear decided he wanted it moved, so it wound up going 9 o'clock on Mondays, which is kind of weird. And then it was like Wednesdays at 9 for like half a season, and it fell to number 12, But still, it was a very, and then it was a top 10 show the rest of its run. And one little thing in that Kenneth Turan article I mentioned, which I didn't know about, was an executive, a cocky executive, as he says in the article, told him that they admitted using All in the Family to hammer other shows, and they said specifically when ABC got real hot, on Saturday nights, we took care of that. We sent All in the Family after it, and I looked at it. Yeah, like the second half of that season, they moved All in the Family against Starsky and Hutch. I guess killed a lot of its momentum. And then it wound up on Sunday nights, like the end of its run. But quite a run. 57 Emmy nominations, 21 wins, 4 for Best Comedy. I think it was the first show to have all 4 of the main actors win Outstanding Actor awards. So I think since then, Will and Grace has done it. I believe I read, and I think those might be the only 2 shows. So we're talking, Best Actor, Best Actress, Supporting Actress, and what a run, So the season we're going to talk about, or the episode we're going to talk about, is Archie and the Bowling Team, which is the 13th episode of the 3rd season, and it premiered December 16th, 1972. And I thought this was interesting, Mike. I looked at the original New York Times for that day, and to see, kind of get to look in the TV listings, see what was going on in New York. And there's this interesting display ad from one of the stations I mentioned earlier, Channel 9. And it's basically just a black background with white text, and it says, "Stifle Archie," and then in parentheses, just this once. Watch Jack Gilford in Bridge Over Troubled Water on Channel 9, tonight at 8 p.m. It's like, what? And I can't find anything about this. There's some kind of short subject. I think he narrated it, maybe. I'm trying to figure out what it was. I know Aretha Franklin, famously sang Bridge Over Troubled Water, started singing Bridge Over Troubled Water. Maybe it might be about that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's funny. The ad says nothing else. The listings say nothing else. And another cool thing I like about that ad is it's just Channel 9, They didn't have to put their call letters. Now,
right.
Any TV ad will have the branding all over it, but no, it's just like Channel 9's. Everybody knows what Channel 9 is. That's the way you refer to things, which was cool. But as far as what was on the networks that night, All in the Family led off 8 p.m. This is Saturday, so it's Bridget Loves Bernie followed at 8:30. That was only on 1 season. It would be the next year, I believe, MASH would join the Saturday night lineup. So this year you did have Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, and Carol Burnett show following that. ABC had Alias Smith and Jones, a Western show. 9 p.m. a show called Streets of San Francisco. I believe we've heard of that show before.
I've heard of that show.
At 10 o'clock, Sixth Sense. This was the Gary Collins anthology show.
Oh, where he
Well,
saw dead people.
Yes, he was in it. It wasn't like he masterminded it, I should say.
Yeah.
Yes, he saw dead people. NBC had Emergency at 8 p.m. and Viva Maria, a 1965 movie with Bridget Bardot and George Hamilton in it.
Wow.
It's kind of a weak. Apologies to Emergency fans,
Yeah.
but NBC. This was a CBS night, I think, through and through.
Yeah. Bridget Loves Bernie aside,
Yeah.
that Saturday night block. I mean, I forgot Carol Burnett was part of it too. So that's
It's weird, and you forget
really
Carol Burnett was an
incredible.
hour-long show too,
Yeah.
like in its original form at 10. And I think Bridget Loves Bernie was removed partly because of protests, because people didn't like it depicting a Jewish and Catholic marriage like in a positive light. Part of it, if it had been like a huge hit like All in the Family,
Yeah.
they probably would have made allowances, but it probably just wasn't doing well enough to fight for it, and they just that was one of the main reasons. I don't think it was like a flop or anything.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we are. December 16th. Archie and the bowling team on this Saturday night, and so this is pretty prime All in the Family. I think this third season sweet spot here.
And one of the primary reasons we picked it, bowling.
Yes, right there, Archie and the bowling
Yeah.
team.
And you've mentioned the Honeymooners. I think we could probably say that Ralph Cramden influenced Archie on some level.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt Fred Flintstone did, but I can't think of TV sitcoms and bowling without thinking of Fred Flintstone.
Exactly.
And like Fred is often grumpy.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go back to that for a second, but he can be quite joyful.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But in this case, as we said, Archie comes in. He's very happy. He's got his classic hat and jacket on.
Mm-hmm.
I really like those. He wears that hat well.
He does. Yes.
The jacket's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't wear it, maybe, but I like it. That
works for him, and he's comfortable in it. And
and Edith runs out to hug him, which I guess she always does, but he doesn't mind this time, and he gives her a little peck on the cheek, maybe the lips even.
yeah.
And then she says, "Are you all right?" And then that's
Right.
where he gives, "No, I was hit by a Mack truck."
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like this episode began too with like a totally unimportant scene of Edith doing a jigsaw puzzle of a pizza.
Oh, does something happen? Because I think that was cut from the streaming version.
It's interesting because what I was thinking was, because I was watching the DVD, because when I was watching them, like, this is exactly the kind of scene that they would cut for syndication, because it's not directly relevant to the point, to the plot, but it's not. But later he mentions like, go back to your jigsaw puzzle,
Right,
but they established that early on. But it's interesting, and it's kind of a nice little scene because it shows Meathead coming down. Hey, Ma, what are you working on? And they do a few jokes that kind of shows like some of her illogical logic and just kind of her dizziness.
But
But a nice way, and he just kind of sits down and just kind of asks her a few questions, and they talk about why she's doing this puzzle and why it's tough. That's interesting. That's disappointing that it wasn't in that.
It just starts with him coming through the door.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, here you go.
There you go.
So the DVD is a little extra scene, but it's not plot pertinent. So
wait, no, that's the correct way to say that word.
yes, yes, that was intentional. Plotment.
Yeah.
Plotment.
Anyway, I might be missing some other information here, so we'll see. And he's all excited because Hank Phillips from the gas station died. He's not excited that he died, except for that it gives him a chance to join a very special bowling team. And Meathead is there, and of course he's outraged. The man died.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right, but he's just immediately over the top about it.
And it's funny because like Archie's kind of like, I don't think he directly says it, but he's like, wait, I haven't finished yet or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when he says it doesn't really make it any better. It
No.
just explains it, but it doesn't like make it any better.
Yeah. And so he wants Edith to put new laces in his bowling shoes because tonight everything counts. Because he has to bowl against two other people to see if he makes on this team. And, which we find out is called the Cannonballers. And the captain of the team, Moose Hansen, is coming over to pick him up. This Moose, he's a heck of a guy. He was having an argument with a guy once, and to settle it, he pulled the door off the guy's car.
Yes.
Then he needed to call home, and somebody was on the phone and wouldn't get off. And guess what he did? He pulled the door off the phone. My guess is that he didn't. And Archie said, I told you that story before.
Yeah. And again, the way he does it is like, it's not like sarcastic.
No.
It's just like he genuinely thinks, maybe
I.
I want to highlight a joke here that I don't know if you were going to mention this, but it's just something like it's just a classic thing of it. And I think one of the reasons why this is actually a very funny episode too is like I think it's about the lacing his bowling shoes.
Yes.
Edith asks him how he'd like it, and he says, well, "What's the difference?" And she says, "Well, if I do it this way, you know,
Right,
so, no, I meant what's the difference is in like who cares, not
Right.
what's the difference is what's the and Edith, which is funny enough the way he says it,
Yeah.
because it's like he genuinely believes, no, I said what's the difference, not what's the difference, but who cares,
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I misunderstood you because and he's like, Edith, but that little sequence there like perfectly sums up the dynamic between those two, and, it's funny,
Yes. Yeah. I love her.
Yeah.
Just watching that, just everything about that character. I mean, like in that case, like when she's a comic irritant.
Yes.
Like totally, like when like Meathead can be an irritant, a comic foil, but he's doing it on purpose.
Right.
Where she's just being herself.
Yeah.
But I always enjoy that particular kind of like annoyance or anger when someone with a short fuse is kind of driven batty by someone who doesn't get that they're doing it. But also she's just such a legitimately decent human being.
She is.
And has an understanding of other people that Archie just doesn't.
Yeah, she's the best, and she genuinely cares about other people. And I got to confess that I think the voice annoyed me when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and I think Gloria did a little bit too.
Yes,
and that's probably one reason I didn't get into the show. But now I have a whole new appreciation for the series because I can appreciate the performances more than I did as a kid. Yeah.
And Edith reminds him that it's his bowling night with his pal Barney, as we mentioned, the great Alan Melvin, and he's like, "Well, no, I can't. I can't bowl with him tonight because I, gotta get on the Cannonballers. They're this great team. They do all this, the best team, and you got to be a special kind of guy." Meathead, to his credit, and probably not that hard after you've known Archie for a while.
Right.
Susses this might mean something else.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's a realistic thing. I don't know if you've had this experience, but sometimes when you have to deal with people who maybe are prejudiced or bigoted or whatever, at least as a white guy, this happened. They talk to you with the assumption that you A, know what they're talking about, and B, believe it. They're just kind of, you know what I mean.
Oh, okay.
Between us white guys, I've definitely had that experience.
Okay, yeah, but it's very.
But unfortunately, I'm not like Meathead, and I don't like. When I worked at Borders, I was working the information desk, and this guy sidled up and was talking to me, and it was fine at first, and then he said something about they all complain about you flying the Confederate flag, but I don't fly that one. I fly the real one they use, so they don't know.
Wow. It seems a bizarre conversation to have.
Yeah. And I think I asked him, can I help you find anything? He's like, no, I can't read.
What?
Yeah.
Seriously?
He was there with his wife or something.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if he meant he literally couldn't read. Just didn't read.
Jeez.
Okay. All right, pal. Move along. Anyway, in this case, you mean they don't take,
they're restricted.
They're restricted, and he's like, Archie tries to talk his way out of it, right? Like, it's not that they don't take; it's just that they only take.
Yeah, it's like it's not what he is; it's what he
ain't. Yeah,
yeah. That's they judge a guy not by what he is, but what he ain't.
Yes.
And then he kind of explains, goes into more detail, and it was like, oh, just you kind of think about it but it's kind of funny the way he says it. It's like again, it's like this like his own logic, and he's so casual about it.
Right.
Like it doesn't even occur to him, that there's anything wrong about it or anything. He's just like, he really believes what he's saying.
Right.
He doesn't see
the scary part about
discrimination. He says, oh, it's just a fact, just the way things are.
Right. And then he goes on about how people want to live with their own kind.
Right.
Right. And black people want to live up in Harlem. And his logic there is that if someone comes to visit, they can just go up to the corner of 125th and Lenox Avenue, and their relatives will walk by at some point.
Right, and then like
it's convenient.
Then Meathead's like like outraged, how ridiculous that sounds.
Right.
And I like Meathead says something about how you're supposed to be judged based on who you are, not he kind of says this in Archie's like that's just for the civil service.
Yes, yeah.
The specificity of that line cracked me up.
Right.
That's just for the civil. He just hand waves it literally.
Yeah.
And he says that's just for the civil service.
And then Gloria comes in with a present for Meathead. just because she loves him, and then they start making out, which they do. And I'm with Archie. Chill out, guys.
Yeah, it's a little much.
Yeah, it's a little much. They do.
And what does he say? When are they going to start acting like married people?
Yeah. And she's gotten him a leather handbag.
Okay, handbag, yeah.
It's a handbag. And, my first reaction was to say to my TV, it's European!
Right.
And
this is 1972, so
yes, yeah.
you can imagine.
Right. That leads to, I would say, Mr. Roper-esque comments, but Archie's much more blunt than Mr. Roper.
He is, and what kind of strikes me is the way he says it. He's got and Archie does this a lot. Yeah. He's got this facial expression. Yeah. He's got a little lightness in his face when he says it. But it's when he knows, not just in this situation, but when he's trying to be funny.
Yes.
And it's actually kind of it's entertaining to watch Carol O'Connor because just this expression, you know it when what I'm talking about when you see it, but it's distinct from when he's just saying things that he thinks are facts. But this was he's trying to be funny.
Yes.
And he's kind of proud of himself for it.
Yeah.
So he's got that little air of not just making the pernt, but just scoring with a clever witticism at the same time, and just his little face
Well, I turned on the captions for something that it bracketed sound effect above his speaking, lisping.
Oh yes.
But he also uses some unpleasant words too.
Yeah, and
a lot of just implications about what that means about if he's, and they're trying to explain. It's very practical. You can carry all your stuff in it. It doesn't. Yeah. You had to fill your pockets. I'm like, well, yeah, but he looks pretty dumb with it.
Yes.
Just something about about Rob Reiner in 1972. This very tall guy.
Yeah.
All day. It's not even a cross. It's just hanging from his arm.
Yeah.
Or from his shoulder. And he did it.
And it's one of those things where he does love it right away.
Yes. Oh,
it's not like you think he would just wear it to defy Archie.
Right.
And that'll happen. But, right away, there's none of that. He's just genuinely loves it and thinks it's really good.
And he's a student. I think, carries books
practical.
And stuff. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's
it's a thoughtful gift from Gloria.
It is. Yeah.
I should say too that the lisping and the slurs are one thing, and Carol O'Connor does that, but his facial expressions make it a little bit more subtle than just lisping and everything. There's a little bit more to it.
Yes,
than that. Yeah. Not to excuse anything, but I'm just saying that that's an example of how it becomes a much more well-rounded portrayal of the character. He brings so much more to it than just on the script. Okay, Archie say this and say it with a big lisp or something like this. Carol O'Connor brings something up more to it, even when
he's a little English on it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes. Very well done. Yeah.
Edith's it's time for dinner, and he's, I don't have time for dinner, and he wants everyone to behave, and because, of course, Moose Hansen is coming over, and people judge you by the family you keep.
Yes.
So Mike's like, I'm going to take you all out to dinner, which, of course, Archie says something, but you better bring your own money.
Yeah.
And he goes upstairs to change his shirt, and while he's up there, Moose arrives, and he lives up to his name.
Yeah, he looks like a moose, doesn't he?
And Archie's all, he's all amped up, and he's like, I can't, this is the most exciting this and those monthly smokers you have. Who told you about those? Those are a secret, cannonball secret, and it's the guy who died. And he's like, well, if he wasn't dead, he'd get kicked out for that. And then, of course, Mike comes down the stairs with his bag. He apparently changed his shirt to an identical shirt.
Yeah.
But he's got his bag, and
it's like his uniform.
Moose starts making faces and some remarks too.
Yeah. And this is funny though, Archie not wanting, of course there's the built-in irony of, Archie not wanting his family to embarrass him.
Yeah.
But again, it shows right away, just this whole aspirational aspect that's kind of touching throughout the episode that shows Archie yearning for connection and to elevate his status.
Yeah. And it shows you that Archie's attitudes are not out of the ordinary for where they live for the time. Here's another guy. He's got the same attitudes,
Right.
And that, when they, or at least in my version, they kind of end the act there. That's when Mike looks particularly silly with his bag.
Yeah.
They're all just, Edith and Gloria and Mike are just standing there. He just looks, I don't know, sad.
Yeah.
But again, it's a practical bag. So who am I to say? And then the next act begins, and Archie's coming home again, and he's
okay. Now, actually, do you have something before that?
Nope.
Okay.
More puzzle time?
I was going to ask you. So no, but you didn't see Mike coming home with Gloria?
No,
Like
they
they come in the door
home.
first with with Edith. They all come in home before Archie comes
I don't
home.
think so.
Okay, so Mike, they come in through the door, and there's a bunch of these like wolf whistles out there, and Mike's like, "Come on, you guys, settle down or whatever." And they're going, and Gloria's like, why are you so upset just because some stupid guys are whistling at me?" He's like, "No, Gloria, they were whistling at me," And then Gloria goes back, opens the door back out, and yells at them, So that was like, again, that was like another scene commenting on that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's like sort of the end of it. But yeah, it's like this big scene with Mike getting wolf whistles because of his handbag.
Boy, I get ripped off.
And then
then Archie comes home and he's all like, just a bundle of nerves, and he tells Edith he doesn't want to talk about it. And Mike is on the phone, and Archie, put down the phone, and he keeps saying, Mike hangs up, and he's still saying.
Yeah, this is some of the most prominent yelling in the episode. Just Archie like tearing into him to put down the phone.
He's like, "I'm waiting for a call," and he's like, or a call in. He's like, I'm having a call out.
Right.
And he's leave me alone. Go work on your puzzle. And so all of them go over there, and then he's like irritated with Edith for going over there. He's like, don't you want to hear what happened?
Yeah, he like tells everybody he wants to be left alone.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to
talk about it. Then he's like, "Who did?"
Oh, okay. And he starts describing like the first guy, Doug Simmons, I think his name is.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Was bowling, and he's not a very good bowler, but he bowled a 167, best he's ever bowled. And Archie's getting nervous, and Moose tells him, "Don't get your bowels in an uproar." He's like, "What a kind thing to say." What? No, it just makes a guy feel good. So then he bowled a 172, which is not his best, but good, and is better than the other guy, Doug. Then Charlie Green comes up, and he gets 2 strikes in a row, and Archie can't handle it, and so he leaves, and Doug is going to call him, but he's just so excited still. He starts talking about the shirts. They're made out of yellow silk with red piping. Apparently, he looks good in yellow, and it's got a cannon firing a bowling ball at pins.
Yeah, he's got this dreamy look when he's describing it too. He's really into it.
They put your nickname on it. They have these great nicknames, The tall guy they call Shorty, the skinny guy the fat guy they call Skinny. And I haven't decided on my nickname. You should be handsome.
Yeah.
And then he explains it to her. I didn't feel that was necessary.
Well, actually,
writing wise,
it's funny you say that, because actually this is maybe my favorite moment of the episode. Because there's like a pause, like a significant pause,
where he
like
does
great timing.
He does a take.
He's doing a take, and he's just like thinking in his head, and then he says, "Nah, see, that wouldn't work, Edith, because and like." I just thought the way, again, that's a classic Carol O'Connor moment, the timing of it, and just coming in, and just the way he says it afterwards. Again, like no hint of it was just with total sincerity. Like he really thinks he has to explain to her,
right? Yeah,
and he does really,
right? He does,
because she wasn't putting an intentional dig on him. Is the way I read it. Like she's not saying it.
No, she's not, of course.
Right, and he doesn't even see that. He just sees it all. Oh, she doesn't get this, but it was like he was thinking over in his head, like that would be good.
Yeah.
And then he realizes, it takes him a minute to realize that, oh no, see, that wouldn't work, but otherwise that would be perfect,
Okay.
So he's just kind of gently explaining to her.
I rescind my criticism. That's
I just say
persuasive argument.
I would just say I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I take it. When I watched that, I kind of like or even rewound it, because I just appreciated that moment so much, because like the timing of it and how they drew that out just the right amount. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay. See, I was thinking more sitcom. Just the joke had landed, so why?
Right. But I think if
in a different
Meathead
show
said it,
yes,
it would be a totally different way.
Right. Yeah.
And this way they played it a little bit different way, and I think it revealed multiple things. In addition to just being funny itself, it showed something about the Archie character that he didn't, that it took a minute, and he's so puffed up that it takes him a minute to realize,
Right. I do enjoy those takes, those Carol O'Connor takes. I mean, they're this close to being, again, Mr. Robert, look at the camera kind of things.
Yeah.
Where he's staring off.
Right.
Kind of.
They're so good, and he's got such an ability to masterfully use like a cigar too, for emphasis, and I mean he really is. He was brilliant on the show. Yeah, no doubt about it.
And Mike does make a joke at his expense that he should put his initials on, and then they can call him AB.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be the only one of those on that team.
Right.
Which I had to sit and ponder about.
Like what? Yeah.
He'd be Jewish. be like he's Abraham. Okay.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But see, I think that's, I don't know if the joke would, whether it would get on the air or not is a different thing. But I don't know if that would work anymore.
I don't think people would understand it right away.
Yeah.
Like that whole ABIE.
Yeah.
That was like a very common name
Uh-huh.
back then, and like in pop culture, like AB's Irish Rose and stuff like this.
Okay.
And like a song and stuff. I think that was more of a thing in the culture.
Yeah.
Whereas now people would just scratch their heads and probably wouldn't understand it.
Right. Yeah. Then the phone rings, and Archie finds out that Charlie Green also bowled his 172, and he is over the moon. He's like, he made it, And Mike's like, well, you got the same score, and he's, but yeah, remember I told you it's a special team for only special guys. Mike's like, oh, is he Jewish? And he's like, oh no, better, he's black.
Mm-hmm.
He says something else, but so he just assumed, well, he's made it.
Right.
And then Barney comes over because it's their bowling night, and Archie's got to give him the scoop. And first he tells him he made the cannonballers, and Barney's all excited for him. But then he's like, I can't bowl with you anymore. It's like once you make the big leagues, you can't play with the bush leaguers.
Mm.
And that's when he's like, you see my print, right?
Yeah.
And Barney's like, I don't see it, but I feel it right here in my back. And he points to his back. And then as he's storming out, he calls, you crumb. That's crumb is my favorite.
You like that one?
Epithet from
yeah,
from All in the Family. People need to bring that back.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. We focus too much on the words that we're not bringing back from All in the Family. But
Yes.
There's some good ones in there that we can pull out and
Meathead,
bring back into circulation.
crumb.
Yeah. And what a Ralph and Ed dynamic there. Except like in this episode, there's there's no resolution to it. I mean, Barney's kind of more of he's obviously not like a main player like Ed Norton was, but man, Barney in this character, and he is just such he just comes in like so like guileless and just like he feels good for Archie or whatever, and then it takes him a while and he's genuinely hurt, understandably. Yeah. And just, boy, Archie really looks like a bum. I mean, honestly, my visceral reaction to this episode was I wasn't so upset about Archie's attitudes as was the way he treated Barney. It was like the worst thing he did in this episode. It's like, man, you're a real heel.
Yeah. Yeah, the only saving grace to that is that being familiar with other characters like that. Like, I'll be friends tomorrow.
Yeah.
With Fred and Barney.
Mm-hmm.
Or Ralph and Norton, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it is a fun little bit. And then after he storms out, Archie starts talking about how they have this like an annual banquet that busts them out to Mineola. Yeah. And the bus has a keg on it.
Yeah, real classy.
These salty pretzels to make you thirsty. And then when you get there, all the cold cuts and potato salad you can shove in yourself.
Yeah. I love this. This is a perfect example of what you were talking about earlier about how him just telling things makes things like so much better. And just his breathless account of it. And it's so sincere again. And like to us, we laugh about like these details, but to him, the details are what makes it so great. Yeah. And just the way he's like so captivated by this idea. It's hilarious.
Well, and there was another episode I watched where he gets accidentally arrested at a UN protest. But before that, Mike comes home from the protest and his shirt's all torn up and stuff, and he gives this elaborate story, and it just reminded me of like things on Seinfeld where someone would, like there's one where Elaine has to drive an annoying guy to the airport in her nightgown, and you don't see that, but then she comes into Jerry's apartment, her hair is all, and she just tells this story, or George telling the story of the golf ball, and, and it's like, oh, that's so much funnier than seeing it.
Right.
Yeah, and he's talking about how everybody gets a trophy, the most improved, the most this, and Mike's like the one with the most prejudice. And he tells him something. I'll refrain from that, but it's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it means. And then Moose shows up, and he's got bad news. Archie didn't make it. They had to take Charlie Green because of pressure from the bowling league. Mm-hmm. Black players in the league.
And the league office and it's interesting. He specifically says too, like if you had beaten him, we could have taken you. Right. But since you're tied,
hands are tied.
Yeah.
He's like the world's changing, and Archie's like, and every time it changes, it kicks me in the butt. But he offers him hope if somebody else dies.
Yeah.
He's first on the list.
That's right.
And for me, that's the end of the show.
Oh, okay, interesting. Because there's a tag that wasn't in your your version apparently, which is actually kind of cool. There's it's just Archie and Edith sitting in their chairs, and Edith says, "I thought you were going to go bowling with Barney." And he says, "Oh no, that bum." I think he calls him a bum, not a crumb. But he says he's going to the fights with some other guy, and Edith's like, "Oh." And then Edith says, and this is why you gotta love Edith. She says, "Would you like me to go bowling with you, Archie?" And just like offering, and he's like, "No." And he's like, "Why don't you stick to what you know best or something?" And she kind of pauses. "What is that?" and then he says like, "Oh, well, you don't know either," or something like that. And then that ends it. Yeah. But it's a very nice note. I like the fact that she offered to go bowling.
Yeah.
And, I find it interesting here that Archie, he makes that note about, getting kicked in the butt every time, which is kind of like summing up a lot of things. But it's interesting, too, that this episode, the way they approached it, I thought was interesting. Because if you think about it, you could easily see them doing an episode, and you might expect it if you heard about this premise, where that would be the beginning of the episode. Right. And then they spend 20 minutes arguing about whether he should have gotten, the spot or not. In this case, it's the end of it, and Archie kind of accepts it, really. Yeah. I mean, and I don't say he's happy about it, but he understands it. He's like, well, I didn't beat him, and there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. It's interesting that they went that way instead of having like a 20-minute argument about affirmative action.
Right, yeah. And interesting that they couched it in a lower stakes thing than like a job.
Yeah. Which later, I guess, affects, Meathead.
Yeah.
But and it's like, and Moose even says like, "Oh, I don't like it any more than you do," but that's the way it is,
Right, yeah.
And it's interesting. It's kind of showing incremental change. Like the guy's attitude hasn't changed, but he's accepting it. And Archie, by transference, he's going to have to accept it too. And that's I guess the show is kind of like saying there that well, change is happening whether you like it or not. Yeah. Even small things like a bowling team.
Right. Well, that's the episode.
I think it was a very funny episode.
Yeah.
We don't see any actual bowling.
No.
But I like revolving around bowling, and it's interesting because that's one of one of the big sociological theories these days, right? The bowling, it's even called like the bowling team theory. That like back in the old days we were less divided as a country because people of different backgrounds. Not that I don't know if bowling was the most cosmopolitan pastime around, but people would. It was a very widespread, hobby and everything. And people would hang out and do things like be on a bowling team or do other clubs and activities. Mm-hmm. And as we've become more insular and don't do those things, that we become more divided because we don't have those organizations to bring us together. Yeah. And this is an example of, how important bowling was. It's like a social activity for Archie, but it's also this way, again, this aspirational thing where he can join this club and improve himself and be proud about being a part of this organization that has these, these smokers. Right. Hush Hush and the banquets. I guess the banquet, there's nothing secretive about the banquet. How could you keep something like that secret, I guess?
I mean, just the amount of cold cuts and potato salad they have to buy. Because, Moose, he could shove a lot of cold cut.
I'll bet he could.
Potato salads down in his body.
His gullet. Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever, Brad Logan, have you ever seen him in anything else?
No, I might have seen him, but I didn't recognize him, and I looked him up. It didn't seem like he did a lot of prominent things besides this. I mean, he had a solid career. I think he did some cartoon voiceover work. Okay. But yeah, I can't point to anything that he's
not like an ex-athlete or something.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It may have been. He may have been like an ex-bouncer or something too.
Yeah.
He was well cast.
Yeah, Carol O'Connor.
Yeah.
Saw him at some club.
Yeah. Does well in what he's supposed to do in this episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like this episode. I think it's funny and it says things, but it says them in a way that's that's telling you things about the characters, and it's not beating you over the head with stuff. It's explicit about what its message is and everything. But again, just because the way they frame it, the focus is more on Archie, and to me the standout of the episode is not it's not even the any issue of revolving race. It's Archie's like yearning. Mm-hmm. For this spot on the bowling team. That's the big standout to the episode to me, and I think they do it very well and weave in all these other things. And there's not as much Gloria in this episode, but everybody else gets pretty good moments.
Yeah. So I think we both came out liking the show maybe more than we thought we would.
I think so. Yeah.
I think we've been avoiding it. Oh, partly just because it's the most talked about show from this era. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, despite those reservations I listed, every episode I watched I liked.
It's not, I think maybe it's probably because of some of the things that you described that maybe didn't bother me as much. It's a little bit better to space out episodes as much as maybe some other classic shows, I think. Yeah. But, any individual episode goes down pretty quickly. and they go by very quick, very fast.
Even more quickly when you're watching them on Freevee.
I guess so, yes. And to me, like the big takeaway is just how brilliant the performance is. Yes, and even Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers, and how the chemistry of all of them it elevates the material, which is usually pretty good to begin with. And to me, yeah, the later seasons I've seen, something's missing when it's not the four of them.
Yeah,
it's just not the same show like the last.
Although
several seasons.
I watched one where it was really just Archie, Edith, and a guest star, and I did like that just because it gave me more of them.
Yeah.
And it was a very sweet episode. But the couple that I saw from later seasons that had Gloria and Mike in them, I could tell there was just something different about her, either in the writing but her performance. She just seemed, the character seemed more confident and more interesting.
Yeah. And
like, again, the one where they play that game, especially.
Yeah.
And she's just standing up to, no.
And she probably advocated for that,
Yeah.
Which is good.
Right.
To me, anything with Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton is worth watching. Any episode,
yes,
and even without Edith, and then the Archie Bunker's place, it's definitely not the same, but it's still gonna be worth watching because of Carol O'Connor.
Yeah.
I do think in most of the episodes, I like with the Mike and Gloria at least kind of there, because I do like that generation gap kind of conflict adds something to it. Besides, and it adds some depth to some of the things. But yeah, I mean, as long as you've got Archie and Edith, you would have a show.
And as I told, I like when Lionel shows up.
Yeah,
because he's always playing. He's really being condescending to Archie without Archie knowing it.
Right. I mean, to me, sometimes I don't know. I kind of mixed feelings about that because it's a little over the. I don't want to say over the top. I think he's doing exactly what they want him to do, but it's almost too unrealistic. That Archie doesn't quite get it. But at the same time, I love Archie's reactions. And you talk about takes. That's a lot of times. Almost every time Lionel comes over, he'll say something that'll make Archie think about something for a few seconds, and then his response makes it clear that it went right over his head.
Right,
and that is very funny. I would like to see a little bit more of different sides of Lionel, than just coming over and like tweaking, Archie like that. But as I think you said it to me the other day, it's like this is a whole different Lionel than you see like on the Jeffersons.
Yeah,
he's very effective when he comes over and interacts with Archie in any way.
And I saw one with George in it. That was kind of weird because Archie and George are basically friendly. And the whole moral of that episode was that Archie had friends. Yeah. Edith was like, you might not be rich, but you're rich with friends. And there's George Jefferson and his ascot. And
well, it's funny to think of how much those two have in common.
Yeah, of course.
In a lot of ways. But yeah, to me, it's like, here's something. Do you think, is it easy for you to think is that the Jeffersons as being in the same world as All in the Family? Like, of all the spinoffs, which do you think is the most, to me, like Maude, and maybe I just recently watched that first episode, so I'm a little bit biased, but to me, Maude, it definitely stands out as an episode. It's like, okay, this is a slightly different setting. It's different environment, but the characters and stuff, and a lot of this is like All in the Family. Good Times, even, I can sort of see, even though it's the characters different. The Jeffersons, I don't know, to me, it seems a little bit like more of a different show.
Oh, okay. Oh,
even though that,
it's, you're downtown.
Yeah.
Or uptown. They're in Manhattan. Yeah. Whatever part of Manhattan they're in.
And it's different, creatively and stuff. And like, and I should say too, like Norman Lear pretty much left All in the Family, before the end of its run. He wasn't like actively involved in it.
I do think that Jefferson's is more sitcom-y.
I mean, it's hard to, I guess, I phrase that in a weird way. I mean, the characters, obviously, it's so obviously a spinoff of All in the Family.
Right.
But to me, like some of those other sitcoms seem more like direct descendants of All in the Family than the Jeffersons. It seems like they took the characters, but they definitely made it a different kind of show.
Right. Well, and All in the Family only really had one celebrity encounter, right?
Yeah.
Where the Jeffersons had them all the time.
Right. And I guess the Jeffersons was on longer than the classic All in the Family, too.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
On the other hand, again, they were in Manhattan, so they
might,
and had some money, so maybe that would happen more often. But still,
yeah.
Archie Bunker never had a museum dedicated to himself.
Right. I think the Jeffersons probably had to resort to like gimmicks more often.
Yeah.
But now All in the Family, though, they're not so much gimmicks, but some of the storylines might not be quite as interesting. And they did bring on. For Archie Bunker's place, they did bring on or than that, they brought in a kid in the ninth season.
Yeah.
So they weren't immune to that either.
No.
Hey, anytime you get to 200 episodes,
you're
going to have some difficulties.
Yep.
with anything.
All right. Anything else to say?
I think I said all. I hope we've done the show justice. It's taken a long time to get here, but I'm glad we did it, and I think I'm going to keep watching some All in the Family.
Yeah.
Even though we've got a lot more programs, both socially relevant and socially irrelevant, to get to this season, All in the Family is something I've kind of paid attention to it, and hey, I did buy the DVD, so might as well make use out of them.
Yeah. A little disappointed I'm missing so much.
I'm surprised. I thought they were totally uncut.
I think it probably depends on the season.
Yeah.
Because I noticed, like, the early ones I watched definitely had tag scenes usually, at least. So, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's just some seasons.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting, though, because like I said, as I was watching that episode, I thought, okay, this scene here is something that I could see that they would totally cut for syndication.
Right.
And that last part, I could see that, too. So, yeah. You didn't miss a whole lot, though. Just like a couple minutes.
Right. Okay. That's All in the Family, and we'll be back again next week. Now, in traditional Norman Lear style, to end in silence.
This episode brought to you by Meathead's Market, the tri-state area's #8 source for meats and cheese and #1 source for arguments. This episode also brought to you by Moose Hanson's Door Removals. This episode also brought to you by bowling, the sport of board millions. Battle of the Network Shows was taped in front of a dog and 2 cats. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.